beside the open door I had never seen before. I used to drop my iron keys across the kitchen space, leaving all my anxious clutter in a messy place. The morning was a frantic search to gather up the ring, a daily sort of panic over such a minor thing. My mind was just a scattered pile of brass and faded steel, a tangled illustration of the rushing things I feel. But you installed this wooden strip with magnets in the core to catch the falling pieces when I walk inside the door. I toss the heavy keychain and the timber pulls it tight, a steady intervention in the fading of the light. The metal finds a center with a reassuring click, a remedy for habits that make my stomach sick. The invisible attraction holds the iron in a line, erasing the confusion from this tired head of mine. Catching the metal, anchoring the pieces in the wood. You don't just watch me scramble when the morning hours break. You give my scattered energy a haven it can take. I don't have to wander through the hallway in the dark. You intercept the clutter and preserve the vital spark. Catching the metal, anchoring the pieces in the wood. You don't just watch me scramble when the morning hours break. You give my scattered energy a haven it can't take. I don't have to wander through the hallway in the dark. You intercept the clutter and preserve the vital spark. People buy expensive bowls to hide the daily mess, a superficial tactic for a very deep distress. But dropping things in ceramic just builds a different pile. It doesn't cure the tension of a long and weary mile. You trust the unseen physics hiding underneath the pine, to grab the flying objects and to keep the borders fine. The key suspending gravity against the vertical face, a masterpiece of order in a complicated place. Toss the silver ring, hear the sudden snap, leave the burden here, fold the weary map. The hallway is a shelter and the frantic search is gone. I trust the simple timber as I learn to carry on. I realize that loving is an organizing force, a willingness to rectify a devastating course. You didn't ask to rearrange the logic in my head. You offered a foundation for the careless things I said. I closed the front door softly and I let the keychain fly. It hits the wooden surface underneath the evening sky. The grip is automatic and the anchor is secure, a testament to a devotion absolute and pure. I slide my winter jacket off and leave the cold behind, grateful for the magnet that calms my racing mind. Catching the metal, anchoring the pieces in the wood, safe and sound. You do not watch me scramble when the morning hours break. You intercept the panic for my own exhausted sake. The keys are resting steady and the hallway feels so calm. I trust your quiet magnet like a necessary bomb. The keys hold. I am home. Square of yellow fabric resting in the velvet case. The varnish lost its luster and the surface turned gray, a dull and cloudy mirror at the fading the day. I used to leave the instrument coated in the grime, but you picked up the microfiber folded in a neat design and pressed it to the timber of this tired heart of mine. You rub the faded polish with the steady circular sweep, awakening the beauty that the wooden fibers keep. The dust surrenders softly to the cloth. You don't just pack the music in the shadow of the bed. You clear the muddy surface of the bitter things I said. I do not have to carry all the smudges of the street. You polish up the timber and you cushion my defeat. Wiping the grain, erasing all the fingerprints and oil. You don't just pack the music in the shadow of the bed. You clear the muddy surface of the bitter things I said. I do not have to carry all the smudges of the street. You polish up the timber and you cushion my defeat. People try to scrub the wood with an abrasive, rigid pad, ruining the finish and the history it had. But heavy-handed friction leaves a permanent white scratch. You trust the woven softness to absorb the dirty stain. A masterclass in navigating through the autumn rain. The spruce begins to shimmer and the rosewood catches light. A stunning restoration in the middle of the night. Rub the tired wood, watch the shadows lift. Clean the varnish top, accept the quiet gift. The surface is a mirror and the resin is pure. I trust the simple fabric, keeping everything secure. I realize that loving is a polishing routine, a willingness to maintain what the tired eyes have seen. You didn't ask to trade the old guitar for something new. You wiped away the damage and you made the framing true. I hold the clean acoustic and I strum an open chord, appreciating maintenance I previously ignored. The music rings out brighter without the heavy dust, a brilliant execution of an undeniable trust. You fold the yellow fabric and you set it in the lid. I am grateful for the quiet and the honest thing you did. Wiping the grain, erasing all the fingerprints safe inside. You don't just pack the music in the shadow of the bed. You clear the muddy surface and you calm my tired head. The instrument is shining and the residue is gone. I trust your quiet rhythm as I learn to carry on. The wood is clean, the song is bright, I am ready. A brown and rigid circle resting on the wooden board. We used to pull the plastic strip to hold the edges tight. The adhesive was a promise pulling everything in place, a visual connection in a complicated space. But fixing broken pieces takes a heavy constant toll. It uses up the ribbon and it empties out the soul. I pulled the final inch of tape to mend a paper tear, a desperate maneuver in the fading winter air. The plastic left the cardboard with a hollow little snap, a final expiration on a solitary map. The roll is stripped of tension and devoid of any glue, a physical translation of the end for me and you. The center is a vacuum with no remedy to give. I stare at the remainder of a life we tried to live. The hollow cylinder sitting empty on the grate. I try to find the sticky edge, but the material is dead, leaving just an echo of the bitter words we said. You cannot hold a future when the adhesive rolls away. I stare at the destruction at the closing of the day. The hollow cylinder sitting empty on the grain. I try to find the sticky edge, but the material is dead, leaving just an echo of the bitter words we said. You cannot hold a future when the adhesive rolls away. I stare at the destruction at the closing of the day. Try to press the cardboard around the edges of the rip to manufacture leverage on a sinking heavy ship. But pressing naked paper leaves a dry and useless mark, a miserable failure in the center of the dark. We used a bar affection trying to cover every flaw, ignoring the reality of an undeniable law. The core is just a paperweight, an uncooperative ghost, a cruel and heavy mockery of what I needed most. Roll the empty ring, hear the hollow sound, fail to fix the tear on the silent ground. The resource is depleted in the connection. I am standing in the wreckage underneath the open sky. I realize that forcing an exhausted broken core is begging for a misery you cannot just ignore. Love requires a substance that can actually unite, not a dry and barren circle in the fading of the light. We rolled the thin adhesive till the center had to break, a casualty of arrogance for our exhausted sake. I take the brown cardboard and I drop it in the trash, accepting that the history is turned to silent ash. I leave the broken paper on the surface of the desk, walk away from trying to repair a sad grotesque. The hollow cylinder sitting empty on the grain, let it dry. I try to find the sticky edge, time to stop, but the material is dead. I surrender the illusion and I clear my tired head. You cannot hold a future when the adhesive rolls away. I walk into the avenue and leave the fading day. The tape is gone, the tear remains, I am done. Breathing easy posture didn't register a charge, a terrifying failure in a room that felt too large. I had to take the cord and twist it back against the grain, a miserable tactic in a solitary pain. I held it at a 40-degree angle by the tip, a very heavy pressure on a sinking fragile ship. The lightning bolt appeared upon the monitor of glass. A temporary victory as quiet hours pass. The copper wires fray inside the center of the weave, bending the wire, holding in a natural design, a tragic illustration of your history in mind. I try to keep the posture, but my fingers start to shake. A miserable effort that my tired hands would make. You cannot pull a current through a compromise extreme. I stare at the destruction of an unrewarding dream. Bending the wire, holding in a natural design, a tragic illustration of your history in mind. I try to keep the posture, but my fingers start to shake. A miserable effort that my tired hands would make. You cannot pull a current through a compromise extreme. I stare at the destruction of an unrewarding dream. I try to stack a heavy book to hold the chord in place, to manufacture leverage in a highly damaged space. But resting heavy objects on a vulnerable bend is guaranteeing tragedy is coming at the end. We forced our conversation into uncomfortable shapes, ignoring the reality of desperate escapes. The inner wire snapped without a single warning sound, leaving me a dead machine upon the wooden ground. Twist the braided cord, watch the screen go black. Fail to find the charge on a ruined track. The power is depleted and the compromise is dead. I am standing in the silence of the bitter words we said. I realize that forcing an unnatural line is volunteering to destroy the original design. Love requires a current that flows easy and direct, not a stressful posture born of arrogant neglect. We push the fragile copper past the limit of the tier and sacrifice the energy into the open air. I pull the useless cable from the socket on the wall, accepting the finale and the sadness of it all. I toss the broken nylon in the garbage by the door. I will not hold an awkward angle for you anymore. Bending the wire, holding an unnatural design, a tragic illustration of your history in mind. Time to stop, keep the posture, but the metal had to break. I surrendered the illusion for my own exhausted sake. You cannot pull a current through a compromise extreme. I leave the broken instrument and wake up from the dream. The line is dead, the screen is black. I am leaving. I chased a loose paper across the dusty room floor, a frantic survivor trying to balance the score. My thoughts were a hurricane lacking a steady design, but you walked inside and you carried the heavy clear dome, a physical anchor creating new home. You set the glass down on the center of the white sheet, a calm intervention for an ordinary defeat. The wind pulls the corners but the center is held in its place, a visual rescue inside a vulnerable space. The glass don't keeping the scatter letters secure. You do not just block the breeze and hold the paper tight. You magnify the ink and make the sentences bright. I do not have to lose my focus in the rushing wind. You show me the value of the places I have been. The glass don't keeping the scatter letters secure. You do not just block the breeze and hold the paper tight. You focus in the rushing wind. You show me the value of the places I have been. People use tape to bind the fragile records down. A sticky restriction leaving a mark on the town. But tape leaves a residue, tearing the fibers apart. A rigid defense for a very tired heart. You trust the invisible gravity pulling the sphere. A tactical comfort eradicating the fear. I look through the curve and the words are bigger and bold. A masterpiece making the story waiting to be told. Drop the heavy glass, read the ink below. Stop the flying page, watch the meaning grow. The draft is defeated and the document's alive. I trace the smooth surface and I know the piece is mine. I realized that loving is a very grounded art. You didn't ask to shut the window or pervade the breeze. You offered an anchor that brought the wind to its knees. I sit at the table and I look into the clear deep, appreciating all the quiet promises we keep. The pages are safe and the narrative is precise, a gentle reflection of the truth inside your eyes. I rest my tired fingers on the cooling glass dome and finally surrender to the feeling of a home. The glass dome keeping scatter letters secure, safe inside. Do I just block the breeze and hold the paper tight? You magnify the ink and guide me through the lonely night. The paper stays anchored and the vision is so clear. I trust the quiet gravity you established here. The breeze blows, the glass holds, I am safe. Foam on the wall, a square of dark charcoal foam stuck to the plaster wall. I used to speak a sentence in the middle of the room and hear it bounce back harsh and angry in the gloom. The empty space magnified the bitter things I said, a ringing repetition in my tired, weary head. My voice was a weapon off the bare paint, a hostile environment for a tired, lonely saint. I couldn't hear the melody beneath the ugly noise, but you brought a stack of wedges cutting geometric lines, a soft architecture for the complicated signs. You mapped out the corners and you glued the panels tight, observing the frequencies that kept me up at night. The hard reflections vanish in the porous dark design, leaving just the intimacy of your voice and mine. Mute in the echo, taking out the harsh and bitter ring. You don't just ask the empty room to magically be still. You cushion the reality of my erratic will. I do not have to wince when the conversation flows. You swallow the static and you let the music grow. Mute in the echo, taking out the harsh and bitter ring. You don't just ask the empty room to magically be still. You cushion the reality of my erratic will. I do not have to wince when the conversation flows. You swallow the static and you let the music grow. People leave the concrete bare and try to whisper low, a cowardly avoidance of the only truth they know. But speaking in a whisper doesn't cure a hollow space, it only hides the panic in a suffocated place. You trust the dark material to catch the flying dart, a masterful acoustic treatment for a tired heart. The room is feeling smaller, but the boundary is warm, a dedicated sanctuary safe from any storm. Press the phone down, hear the silence fall. Trust the quiet room, stand up very tall. The ringing is defeated and the audio is pure. I speak my honest feelings and I know they are secure. is an acoustic embrace, a willingness to modify a harsh and rigid place. You didn't ask to change the words or edit what I feel. You altered the environment to make the audio real. I stand in the center and I let a vocal fly, unbothered by the echoes of a complicated sky. The sound is rich and intimate, devoid of any glare, a physical reflection of the depth of your own care. I lean against the pattern and I let my shoulders drop, grateful for the haven where the angry noises stop. Muting the echo, taking out the harsh and safe inside, safe inside. You do not ask the empty room to magically be still. You pad the rigid plaster and accommodate my will. The frequency is honest and the ringing fades away. I trust your quiet armor as I navigate the day. The room is warm, the voice is clear, I am heard.
A tiny silver screw resting on the tripod base, a mechanism meant to hold the camera in its place. We framed the distant mountain and we turned the locking ring to capture a definitive monumental thing. The threads were gripping tightly in the copper of the mount, a steady calculation I was ready to account. But twisted metal hardware with an arrogant demand is pushing the fragility I didn't understand. I forced the little handle to eradicate the sway, a violent maneuver that took all the grip away. The threads began to flatten and turn into a smooth line, a tragic demolition of your history and mine. I placed a heavy camera but the angle slipped right down, a miserable failure in the center of the town. The lens drops to the floorboard and the focus turns to blur, a miserable failure in the center of the town. The strip thread standing in an empty quiet void. I try to turn the lever but the metal refuses to catch. We burned away the fiction and eradicated the match. You cannot hold a vision when the intersection dies. I stare at the distortion underneath the open skies. The strip thread standing in an empty quiet void. I try to turn the lever but the metal refuses to catch. We burned away the fiction and eradicated the match. Cannot hold a vision when the intersection dies. I stare at the distortion underneath the open skies. Yeah, I tried to jam a paper shred inside the empty gap to manufacture leverage on a solitary map. But adding superficial tricks to broken heavy steel is a cowardly avoidance of the panic that I feel. We forced the conversation past the tolerance of the joint, demanding up perfection to an isolated point. The camera nods its heavy hand, refusing to look straight, a terrifying lesson in a complicated fate. Twist the silver arm, feel the hollow spin, accept the quiet and wet. The tears begin, the angle is corrupted and the symmetry is gone. I do not have the friction to continue holding on. I realize that forcing a connection past the line is volunteering to destroy the original design. Love requires a mutual and delicate risk. We ruin the foundation by demanding it to yield and shatter the perimeter of a solitary field. I pull the metal tool away and drop it on the floor, accepting I will never turn the handle anymore. The tripod sits there useless, unfixable and sad. I walk away from fighting for the history we had. A strip thread spinning in an empty quiet void. Let it go, now I know. I tried to turn the lever but the intersection failed. I surrender the illusion to the sorrow that prevailed. You cannot hold a vision when the corners turn to dust. I drop the broken instrument and leave the broken trust. The mount is loose, the view is lost. I am done. sheet of black sandpaper glued across a maple deck. The surface built to save a rider from an awful wreck. We used to drop the timber on the concrete of the street and rely upon the friction for the traction of our feet. The grit was sharp and rigid, holding canvas to the board, a fundamental safety that we never once ignored. But dragging heavy rubber takes a toll upon the grain, a microscopic vanishing inside the autumn rain. I stepped onto the maple just to navigate the hill, expecting a reliable and dedicated will. But the grit was worn to nothing, just a smooth and dusty gray, a terrifying surface that left my footing straight. My shoe slid off the corner and I tumbled to the road, a physical disaster dropping on my heavy load. The grip is fully compromised, the surface offers glass. I sit upon the pavement watching all the traffic pass. I try to plant my footing but the canvas slips away, leaving me defeated at the closing of the day. You cannot ride a journey when the surface is destroyed. I stare at the destruction in an isolated void, erasing friction, sliding on a ruined flat design. I try to plant my footing but the canvas slips away, leaving me defeated at the closing of the day. You cannot ride a journey when the surface is destroyed. I stare at the destruction in an isolated void. Try to wipe the dust away, to find the hidden bite, to orchestrate a rescue in the middle of the night. But sweeping empty sandpaper doesn't resurrect the edge, it only proves I am slipping off a terrifying ledge. We let the communication wear the boundaries to the bone, ignoring the reality of standing all alone. The board is just a liability, a hazard in the dark, a cruel and heavy mockery of what was once a spark. Step on the maple, feel the sudden slide, fail to find the grip, nowhere left to hide. The journey is abandoned and the momentum is a threat. I walk away from riding and the things I now regret. I realize the force in a depleted broken ride is volunteering entrance where the fatal errors hide. Love requires a texture that can tolerate the strain, not a smooth and glassy surface in the middle of the rain. Reward the vital instrument by asking for too much and ruin the capacity of any steady touch. I pick the wooden skateboard up and drop it by the bin, accepting the finale of the era we were in. The street is stretching outward and my hands are finally bare. I walk into the avenue and breathe the winter air. Erase friction, sliding on a ruined flat design. Let it drop. I tried to plant my footing but the rubber had to fail. I surrender the illusion of a complicated tale. You cannot ride a journey when the surface is destroyed. I leave the broken instrument and navigate the void. The board is slick, the ride is done. I am walking. I used to push the timber with an agitated hand. I used to push the timber with an agitated land. The drywall was a casualty of navigating stress, a crumbling architecture in the solitary mess. My habits were aggressive and my margins were too thin, allowing all the panic and the heavy shadows in. But you walked up and placed a tiny circle on the paint, a transparent intervention from an understanding saint, to dot a clear silicone directly in the path, to interrupt the violence of my solitary wrath. The wood connects the wall but the impact is denied, a microscopic barrier that alters everything. You do not lie. tell my heavy hands to stop. You intercept the damage and you let the anger drop. I do not have to leave a broken crater in the room. You cushion my momentum and eradicate the gloom. Softening the blow, taking out the sudden bitter sting. A microscopic barrier that alters everything. You do not lock the door, tell my heavy hands to stop. You intercept the damage and you let the anger drop. I do not have to leave a broken crater in the room. You cushion my momentum and eradicate the gloom. People try to cover up the damage with the frame, ignoring the foundation doesn't fix the swinging door. It guarantees the handle will attack the wall once more. You trust the preparation and the preventative grace, a masterpiece of working in a very tiny space. The door bounces gently with a satisfying thud, calming the adrenaline and rushing of the blood. Push the heavy pine, feel the quiet catch, save the painted wall from the bitter scratch. The house is standing steady and the damage is undone. I trust the quiet boundary beneath the setting sun. I realize that loving is a very subtle pad, a willingness to intercept the habits that I had. You didn't ask to renovate the building or the frame. You placed a tiny buffer and you dignified my name. I pushed the door open and I stepped into the light, unbothered by the echoes of a complicated night. The silicone is yellow from the passing of the days, a physical translation of the comfort that it pays. I traced a little circle and I let my shoulders fall, grateful for the buffer that protects me from it all. Softening the blow, taking out the sudden and bitter sting. Safe inside the microscopic barrier that alters everything. Nowhere to hide. You do not lock the door, I tell my heavy hands to stop. You cushion my reality and let the anger drop. The slamming is a memory, the evening air is calm. I trust your quiet patience like a necessary balm. The door rests, the wall is safe, I am home. Yeah, yeah. A thin line of copper hanging from the metal base, a tiny wire searching for a designated place. I hooked the RCA cables to the back of the machine, expecting the needle on the spinning black groove, waiting for the melody to elevate and move. But a terrifying buzz erupted from the speaker cone, a low and angry frequency I had to face alone. The static was a hum that swallowed up the Vulcan track, a frustrating interference I was never getting back. I checked the heavy power and I tapped the silver dial, walking in a circle for a very weary mile. But you took the little copper fork and screwed it to the amp. A quiet intervention by the glow of the desk lamp. The hum dissolves entirely into the wooden floor. I do not have to listen to the static anymore. Ground in the current, pulling all the static from the air. A quiet intervention when the panic settles there. You do not stop the record or command the song to wait. You route the angry energy to alter up
take my stray voltage and you put it in the ground. Ground in the current, pulling all the static from the air. I'm pulling a quiet intervention when the panic settles there. You do not stop the record or command the song to wait. You ride the angry energy to alter up the fate. I don't have to navigate the noisy, bitter sound. You take my stray voltage and you put it in the ground. People try to turn the volume down to hide the noise, a cowardly surrender of their quiet honest poise. But lowering the output doesn't cure a toxic hum, it only brings a shadow over everything to come. You trace the road, the electricity, and give it an escape. A masterpiece of working with a very fragile shape. The music flows like water from the center of the deep, a testament to all the quiet promises we keep. Twist the silver screw, watch the copper hold. Listen to the song, brave and very bold. I trust the simple wire, keeping everything secure. I realized that loving is an electrical design, a willingness to route the stray anxieties of mine. You didn't ask to change the tune or edit out the bass. You cleared the interference in a complicated place. The record spins in silence, take the music in the groove, a masterful reality that you began to prove. I sink into the sofa and I close my tired eyes, protected from the static of the unexpected skies. I lean against your shoulder and I let the rhythm play, grateful for the clarity you brought into the day. Ground in the current, no static from the air, safe inside. Intervention when the panic settles there. Nowhere to hide. You do not stop the record or command the song away. You neutralize the voltage and you clarify the fate. The hum is just a memory. The audio is bright. I trust your quiet anchor as I navigate the night. The buzz is gone, the song is clear, I am safe.
A tiny tube of quartz sitting in the metal frame. We push the dimmer switch to the maximum degree. The halogen burned brighter than the midday summer sun, a glaring illustration of the damage we had done. But pushing electricity beyond the rated scale is volunteering entrance to a terrifying tale. The tungsten glowing white, I couldn't handle all the juice. A miserable casualty of solitary abuse. A sudden flash of blue and then a horrifying pop, the quiet notification that the energy must stop. The glass interior clouded, the current hit the socket, but the filament is dead. I am standing in the darkness of the bitter words we said. The broken filament burning out the center of the core. A tragic realization, we aren't shining anymore. I try to flick the switch, but the chemistry is lost. I am staring at the shadow, calculating up the cost. You cannot force a future when the instrument is charred. I stand inside the living room and leave the door unguarded. The broken filament burning out the center of the core. A tragic realization, we aren't shining anymore. I try to flick the switch, but the chemistry is lost. I am staring at the shadow, calculating up the cost. You cannot force a future when the instrument is charred. I stand inside the living room and leave the door unbarred. I try to tap the glass to see if wire would connect, to orchestrate a rescue of a solitary wreck. The miserable silence on a solitary street. We force the conversation past the tolerance of light, demanding a perfection in the middle of the night. The bulb is just a paperweight, an uncooperative ghost, a cruel and heavy mockery of what I needed most. Flick the plastic switch, watch the shadow wait, failed to find the spark, accept the quiet fate. The glass is stained forever and the circuitry is done. I walk away from fighting in the fading of the sun. I realize that forcing an affection to explode is volunteering to dismantle every bridge upon the road. Love requires a voltage that is steady and precise, not a burning overload that demands a heavy price. We ruined the foundation by ignoring all the signs and shattered the perimeter of our intertwining lines. I pull the blackened cylinder from out the silver base, accepting the finale of this unrewarding place. I drop it in the garbage and I walk into the street, accepting the reality of this profound defeat. The broken filament burning out the center of the core. Time to stop. I try to flick the switch, but the chemistry was dead. I surrender the illusion and I clear my tired head. You cannot force a future when the instrument is charred. I walk into the avenue and leave the empty yard. The bulb is black, the room is dark, I am done. Plastic in the pool. A blue and white cylinder floating on the open tile, designed to keep the water clean across a weary mile. We drop the chemical tablets in the center of the base to purify the shadows of an isolated space. The plastic bob gently on the surface of the wave, a quiet little guardian, we trusted it to save. But sunlight turns the plastic to a brittle, chalky dry, a microscopic weakness underneath the open sky. I bumped the floating vessel with the handle of the net, a careless maneuver resulting in regret. The top cap fractured open in the jagged ugly line, erasing the integrity of your history and mine. The water rushed and we're filling up the empty dome, a devastating sinking of a temporary home. The buoyancy surrenders to the gravity of stone. The vessel hits the bottom and I navigate alone. The sunken float, resting on the bottom of the deep. I try to pull it up, but the mechanism fails, leaving the polluted water on these complicated trails. You cannot clean a future when the instrument is destroyed. I stare at the destruction in an isolated void. The sunken float, resting on the bottom of the deep. I try to pull it up, but the mechanism fails, leaving the polluted water on these complicated trails. You cannot clean a future when the instrument is destroyed. I stare at the destruction in an isolated void. I try to tape the plastic crack to seal the water out, to orchestrate a rescue of a solitary doubt. But tape refuses sticking to a wet and ruined shell, a miserable tactic in an isolated hell. We left our communication exposed to all the heat, a recipe for dryness and an ultimate defeat. The vessel is a paperweight, an uncooperative ghost, the cruel and heavy mockery of what I needed most. Reach into the blue, pull the plastic out, watch the water spill, silence all the doubt. The chemistry is ruined and the water turns to green. I am walking from the saddest wreckage I have seen. I realize the force in a depleted broken craft is volunteering entrance to a sinking heavy raft. Love requires maintenance to keep the edges soft, the willingness to hold the delicate routine aloft. We ruin the foundation by ignoring all the signs and shatter the perimeter of intertwining lines. I drop the broken cylinder into the open trash, accepting that the history is turned to silent ash. I do not need to purify a water that is dead. I turn my collar upward and I clear my tired head. The sunken float, resting on the bottom of the deep, let it drop. A tragic little ending to the promises we keep. Time to stop. I try to pull it upward, but the plastic had to break. I surrender the illusion for my own exhausted sake. You cannot clean a future when the instrument is destroyed. I walk into the avenue and navigate the void. The plastic sinks, the water clouds, I am done. My posture was corrupted by the moving of the bass, a miserable struggle in a complicated place. I couldn't draw the bow without a hesitation in the wrist, a constant navigation of a terrifying mist. But you walked up and handed me a block of solid oak, a quiet intervention just before the rhythm broke. You hooked the nylon tether to the bottom of the chair and dropped the wooden anchor in the open waiting air. The metal finds the divot in the center of the wood. The instrument is standing right exactly where it should. The wooden block catching all the slipping in the dark. You do not play the strings or try to dominate the song. You build a quiet structure where the melodies belong. I do not have to wrestle with the gravity no more. You give my heavy spirit a foundation on the floor. You give my heavy spirit a foundation on the floor. Catching all the slipping in the dark. You do not play the strings or try to dominate the song. You build a quiet structure where the melodies belong. I do not have to wrestle with the gravity no more. You give my heavy spirit a foundation on the floor. Try to force the floor to tolerate the scratch, ignoring all the damage of a complicated match. But you respect the timber and you mitigate the pain. A masterclass in navigating through the freezing rain. The anchor has a dozen little holes to find a fit, a customized allowance for the places I commit. I lean the heavy instrument against my tired chest, protected by the certainty of an undeniable rest. Drop the silver spike, feel the timber hold, draw the heavy bow, brave and very bold. The trust, the quiet safety that is absolute and pure. I realize that loving is a foundation of port. You didn't ask to change the tune or edit out the flat. You gave me a foundation and you left the world at that. I play a deep adagio that echoes in the hall, a testament to standing up and conquering the fall. The tether holds the tension and the anchor doesn't slide, a very private universe where weary spirits hide. I play the final measure and I look into your eyes, protected from the panic of the unexpected skies. The wooden block catching all the slipping in the dark. You do not play the strings or try to dominate the song. You give a solid landing where the melodies belong. The instrument is steady and the sliding fades away. I trust your quiet haven as I wake to face the day. The spike is set, the cello sings, I am home. A set of plastic blades spinning hidden in the back, a necessary engine on a solitary track. I couldn't regulate the heat or navigate the stress, a frantic
chaotic sort of failure in a solitary mess. But you are like the fan rotating softly by the wall, a quiet intervention that prevents the coming fall. You push the ambient air across the surface of the line, erasing the fever from this history of mine. The temperature stabilizes underneath the gentle blow, the most reliable devotion that my weary heart can know. The gentle hum working in the shadows out of sight, a dedicated guardian protecting all the night. You do not need the spotlight or a superficial praise. You quietly absorb the heat and navigate the days. I do not have to overheat and shatter in the dark. You offer a breeze to calm my tired, anxious spark. The gentle hum working in the shadows out of sight, a dedicated guardian protecting all the night. You do not need the spotlight or a superficial praise. You quietly absorb the heat and navigate the days. I do not have to overheat and shatter in the dark. You offer a breeze to calm my tired, anxious spark. People praise the icy white inside the open door, ignoring the mechanics resting on the dusty floor. But making things appear so calm requires a heavy sweat, a willingness to labor and a willingness to forget. You spin your quiet rhythm without asking for a crown, a solitary anchor in the center of the town. The kitchen is a peaceful and an ordinary space, because you are working in an unglamorous place. Hear the plastic spin, feel the copper cool, watch the system run for a grateful fool. The engine is protected and the interior is fine. I trust the unseen labor making your affection mine. I realize that loving is an unassuming chore, a willingness to carry what the others just ignore. You didn't ask to stand in front and navigate the view. You took the hardest corner to confirm my trust in you. I lean against the counter and I listen for the sound, the most melodic rhythm my exhausted ears have found. The machine is humming steady in the middle of the night, a physical translation of the things you made so right. I trace the painted metal and I offer up a smile. I know the steady motion is gonna last a while. The gentle hum working in the shadows, safe inside, dedicated guardian protecting all. Nowhere to hide. You do not need the spotlight or a superficial praise. You push the cooling air and you stabilize the days. The engine runs on safety and the panic fades away. I trust your quiet motor as I wake to face the day. The fan turns, the core cools, I am safe.
We try to pull the scattered wires into manufacture order out of your history and mine. I fed the pointed tail into the square receiver head, expecting a definitive conclusion to the things we said. But tightening a boundary takes an undisputed grip, a physical reality on a sinking heavy ship. I pulled the plastic forward, expecting the rigid click, a reassuring sound that makes the messy shadows sick. But the tiny nylon teeth had worn completely smooth, A miserable failure of an undeniable truth. The strap slid backward through the designated lock. A quiet execution and a devastating shock. The friction is deleted and the mechanism dies. I stare at the disaster underneath the open skies. Dropping the thread, sliding through an empty quiet hold. I try to pull the binding, but the plastic refuses to catch. We burned away the friction and eradicated the match. You cannot tie a future when the intersection is destroyed. I stare at the destruction in an isolated void. Dropping the thread, sliding through an empty quiet hold. I try to pull the binding, but the plastic refuses to catch. We burned away the friction and eradicated the match. You cannot tie a future when the intersection is destroyed. I stare at the destruction in an isolated void. I tried to tie a manual knot to force the nylon tight, to orchestrate a rescue in the middle of the night. But tying broken plastic leaves a clumsy, ugly bump. A miserable failure resting on a broken stump. We forced the conversation past the tolerance of the frame, demanding a perfection in an isolated game. The wires are tangled on the center of the floor. A visual reminder we cannot do this anymore. Pull the heavy strap, feel the hollow slide. Fail to find the grip, nowhere left to hide. The angle is corrupted and the symmetry is gone. I do not have the friction to continue holding on. I realize that forcing a connection past the line is volunteering to destroy the original design. Love requires a mutual and delicate trance. We ruin the foundation by demanding it to yield, and shattered the perimeter of a solitary field. I pull the useless nylon and I drop it in the trash, accepting that the history has turned to silent ash. I leave the messy cables resting tangled on the pine. I walk away from fixing this corrupted, broken line. Dropping the thread, sliding through an empty quiet. Let it drop, a tragic little ending to a story getting old. I try to pull the binding, but the plastic had to fail. I surrender the illusion of a complicated tale. You cannot tie a future when the intersection is destroyed. I walk into the avenue and navigate the void. The grip is gone, the wires scatter. I am done. We try to join a denim to a heavy piece of hide. I pressed the heavy pedal and the motor started loud. But piercing thick material requires a steady pace. I forced the heavy fabric through the center of the foot, ignoring all the warnings on a solitary route. The silver needle struck the dense and unforgiving seam. A sudden interruption to an optimistic dream. The metal bent and fractured with a sharp and stabbing back. The motor spins in silence and the stitching falls apart. I am staring at the wreckage of an isolated heart. I
try to push the fabric, but the mechanism fails, leaving a disjointed mess on complicated trails. You cannot sew a future when the instrument is dead. I stare at the destruction of the bitter words we said. The snap needle flying in the center of the dark, a devastating execution of a quiet spark. I try to push the fabric, but the mechanism fails, leaving a disjointed mess on complicated trails. You cannot sew a future when the instrument is dead. I stare at the destruction of the bitter words we said. I tried to tie the cotton with a manual, clumsy hand to orchestrate a rescue in an isolated land. But fixing heavy damage with a temporary knot is throwing away water and discarding what we got. We forced our expectations on a fundamentally weak base, demanding a perfection in a terrifying space. The denim is unblemished and the leather is untouched, a physical translation of the things we never clutched. Press the heavy foot, hear the awful sound, watch the metal break, falling to the ground. The machine is paralyzed and the connection is a lie. I am walking from the remnants underneath the open sky. I realize that forcing an affection to connect is a devastating habit of an arrogant neglect. Love requires materials that naturally align, not a heavy-handed forcing in a solitary design. We broke the vital instrument by asking for too much and ruined the capacity of any gentle touch. I dropped the broken silver in the center of the trash, accepting that the history is turned to silent ash. I fold the heavy fabric and I put it in the drawer. I walk into the avenue and do not fight it more. The snap needle flying in the center of the dark, let it drop. Devastating execution of a quiet spark. Time to stop. Try to push the fabric, but the mechanism failed. I surrender the illusion to the sorrow that prevailed. You cannot sew a future when the instrument is dead. I leave the broken metal and I clear my tired head. The needle breaks, the cloth is torn, I am done.
Rubber on the brick. A circular piece of rubber sticking to the painted brick. I used to throw the heavy door without a second thought, ignore the consequences of the things I bought. The brass handle slammed into the center of the wall, leaving a deep crater right before the autumn fall. My days were a collection of a volatile exchange, a loud and angry echo in a complicated range. Every minor failure sent a shockwave through the spine, a devastating error blurring your life and mine. But you peeled the paper back and pressed the rubber flat, ending the destruction and leaving the world at that. You placed it where the metal meets the fragile painted stone, a quiet reassurance that I never walk alone. The wood flies open fast but hits a designated space, a tactile intervention in an ordinary place, absorbing the shock, catching all the anger and the heat. You do not lock the hinges or demand I stay inside. You cushion the momentum where my weary shadows hide. I do not have to leave a broken crater in the room. You give my heavy panic a specific place to bloom, absorbing the shock, catching all the anger and the heat. Microscopic barrier for an everyday defeat. You do not lock the hinges or demand I stay inside. You cushion the momentum where my weary give my heavy panic a specific place to bloom. People try to cover up the damage with the frame. Ignoring over plaster doesn't fix the swinging door. It guarantees the handle will attack the wall once more. You trust the preparation and the preventative grace. A masterclass in working in a very tiny space. The door bounces softly with the satisfying thud, calming the adrenaline and rushing of the blood. Push the heavy pine, feel the quiet stop, lose the angry noise, let the tension drop. The house is standing steady and the damage is undone. I trust the quiet boundary beneath the setting sun. I realize that loving is a very set up pad. You didn't ask to renovate the building or the frame. You placed a tiny buffer and you dignified my name. I pushed the door open and I step into the light, unbothered by the echoes of a complicated night. The silicone is yellow from the passing of the days, a physical translation of the comfort that it pays. I trace the little circle and I let my shoulders fall, grateful for the buffer that protects me from it all. Absorbing the shock, catching all the anger and the heat, safe inside a microscopic barrier for an everyday defeat. Nowhere to hide. You do not lock the hinges or demand I stay inside. You cushion the reality where weary spirits hide. The slamming is a memory, the evening air is calm. I trust your quiet patience like a necessary balm. The wall holds, the noise stops, I am home. A plank of heavy timber stretching right across the wall. I loaded up the surface with 100 different books, ignoring the reality and taking second looks. The center started bowing in a terrifying curve. I used to pile the history and let the structure bend, a careless expectation of a dedicated friend. The palm was groaning softly under all the heavy weight, but you brought an angle cut from heavy solid cast, a mechanism engineered to guarantee it lasts. You drove the metal screws into the center of the stud, a quiet intervention for the rushing of the blood. The iron takes the burden and the timber levels out. You silence the progression of a terrifying doubt. Racing the shelf, taking on the heavy silent strain. You don't just clear the pages or demand I throw them out. You offer a foundation and eradicate the doubt. I don't have to watch the center sag into the floor. You build a quiet structure I can trust a little more. Bracing the shelf, taking on the heavy silent strain. You don't just clear the pages or demand I throw them out. You offer a foundation and eradicate the doubt. I don't have to watch the center sag into the floor. You build a quiet structure I can trust a little more. People try to buy a lighter, superficial load to manufacture safety on a complicated road. But memories are heavy and the history is dense. It requires a reliable and structural defense. You place the metal bracket in the shadows underneath, the quiet reassurance that my tired lungs believe. The books remain in order and the pictures are secure, a testament to a devotion absolute and pure. Drive the metal screw, feel the timber lift, hold the heavy past, the monumental gift. The sagging is defeating and the surface is aligned. I trace the heavy iron making your affection mine. I realize that loving isn't under the surface strength, the willingness to tolerate the vertical length. You didn't ask to empty out the volumes of my past. You leveled the foundation so the memories could last. I place another novel on the center of the wood and trust the architecture standing right where it should. The library is silent and the brackets holding firm, a steady sort of magic for a complicated turn. I run my thumb across the painted surface of the cast and rest inside a boundary designed to always last. Bracing the shelf, taking on the heavy silent strain. Safe inside, bracing the shelf, the
the rain. Nowhere to hide. You don't just clear the pages of demand. I throw them out. You offer a foundation and eradicate the doubt. The timber is unbending and the gravity is gone. I trust your quiet anchor as I learn to carry on. The wood holds, the iron stays. I am safe.
A row of metal hammers resting in the dusty yard. We used to strike the buttons and produce a steady line. The letters were meticulous and printed on the sheet, but typewriter maintenance requires a steady hand. They clean and understand. The ink began to gather in the center of the keys. I pushed a heavy cylinder to type a final word, expecting that my quietest apologies were heard. But the metal hit the ribbon and produced a heavy smudge, a dark and unreadable, terrifying sludge. The letters are obliterated by the toxic crust. I stare at the disaster, a solitary trust. I try to type a future, but the mechanism fails, leaving a disjointed mess on complicated trails. You cannot print a message when the instrument is dead. I stare at the distortion of the bitter words we said. Stare at the distortion of the bitter words we said. I try to type a future, but the mechanism fails, leaving a disjointed mess on complicated trails. You cannot print a message when the instrument is dead. I stare at the distortion of the bitter words we said. I tried to take a needle just to dig the center out, to orchestrate a rescue of a solitary doubt. But scraping dried up chemical destroys the metal face, a miserable tactic in an isolated space. We let the communication dry and wither in the sun, ignoring the reality of what we had begun. The page is full of shadows where the meaning used to sit, a visual translation of the ending, I admit. Strike the heavy key, watch the shadow fall, fail to type the truth, I cannot save it all. The paper is corrupted and the alphabet is gone. I do not have the medium to continue holding on. I realize that forcing an exhausted broken type is volunteering entrance to a solitary gripe. Love requires a medium that functions as it should, not the broken instrument failing where it stood. We ruin the foundation by ignoring the decay, and watch the vital syllables slowly wash away. I pull the ruined paper from the roller of the drum, accepting the reality of what we have become. I leave the broken typewriter gathering the dust, and walk into the avenue, abandoning the trust. I tried to type a message, but the instrument was dead. I surrendered the illusion, and I clear my tired head. You cannot print a future when the alphabet is torn. I walk out to the morning and leave the empty morning. The key is blank, the text is gone. I am leaving. But metal loses temper when it chews upon the past, a silent deterioration that is happening so fast. I grabbed a stack of photographs to run them through the gear, to finalize the exit and eliminate the fear. I push the glossy paper in the center of the track, expecting a definitive and undeniable crack. But dull machinery refuses to perform a slice. It grabs the heavy paper and the suffocating vice. The motor strains and stutters on a tangled, messy knot. I stare at the destruction of the only thing we got. Erasing the edge, chewing on a complicated past. A devastating failure that was engineered to last. I try to slice the history, but the metal refuses to bite, leaving me a tangled mess in the middle of the night. You cannot cut a future when the instrument is dead. I stare at the distortion of the bitter words we said. Erasing the edge, chewing on a complicated past. A devastating failure that was engineered to last. I try to slice the history, but the metal refuses to bite, leaving me a tangled mess in the middle of the night. You cannot cut a future when the instrument is dead. I stare at the distortion of the bitter words we said. I tried to pull the photograph from out the metal jar to orchestrate a rescue from the terrifying flaw. But ripping gem material, peat an ugly tear, a desperate avoidance of the heavy, dark despair. We forced a separation, but we lack the edge to quit. A slow and agonizing stretching, we refuse to admit the string of memory is tangled in a sticky, ugly ball. A visual translation of the tragedy of it all. Push the heavy sheet, hear the motor cry. Fail to make the cut underneath the sky. The machine is paralyzed and the connection is a lie. I'm walking from the remnants with the quiet, bitter sigh. I realize that forcing a depleted, broken tool is volunteering entrance for a dedicated fool. Love requires a boundary that knows the way to part, not a stretched out ligament that ruins the tired heart. We ruin the foundation by ignoring all the signs and jam the heavy plastic on our intertwined lines. I switched the power off and pulled the plug out of the wall, accepting the finale and the sadness of it all. I leave the broken shredder sitting useless on the floor. I walk into the avenue and turn away the door. Erasing the edge, chewing on a complicated past. Let it drop, a devastating failure that was engineered to last. Time to stop. I try to slice the history, but the metal had to fail. I surrender the illusion of a complicated tale. You cannot cut a future when the instrument is dead. I turn my collar upward and I clear my tired head. The machine is stuck, the past is tangled, I am done.